Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Politics Relaxed. It's great to be back, especially during an election. We'll have lots of interviews for you coming very soon, which I'm very excited about. So keep subscribed and posted to our socials to see all of that. But let's get straight into it. We're talking about the manifestos predominantly today, and as well just kind of a update on the elections. So yeah, I mean, let's get started. Should we? We could go Labour.
Yeah, yeah, let's go Labour.
Okay.
Because
Let's.
from what I've been seeing of the campaign, it seems like a lot of the scrutiny that's being given towards Labour,
Mm,
it's as if they're already the governing party.
mm,
Um, and anything towards the Conservatives, I mean, especially in the debates, all the other parties are saying, at least the non-Labour parties are saying, the Conservatives are finished,
yeah.
and this is why you shouldn't vote Labour.
There's two sides to this, right? I mean, a lot of people say, well, it's quite radical, but because everything was pre-announced, then then it loses its like flash. But I don't know. I think there's probably a little bit more that Labour could be doing. I'm aware of the financial situation that this country finds itself in, thanks to the Conservatives to a large degree. But you know, Labour could probably do some more in terms of actually putting policies out there, because I suspect they do have more policies that they want to put in when they get into government, but it seems like
Yeah,
they're
I'd
too
hope so.
scared they're too scared to actually
Yeah.
put them out there, and you know that's not good for democracy at the end of the day.
Um, They're going with this whole growth,
Mm.
big growth rhetoric, which is very Liz Truss, but I think it works better with for Labour, because they're in general, I think they can be taken more seriously.
Mm.
Although it's still like it doesn't really help with the Conservative comparisons, and then of course other parties are going very strongly with that, and I also in terms of media appearances, I don't think Keir Starmer is particularly strong there. I haven't been that impressed by what he's done so far. I mean, he's better than Rishi Sunak, but that's not difficult. So yeah, I don't think we're going to expect much more openness from a Labour
Mm.
government towards the media than we have seen from a Conservative government.
The problem with them going so much on the economic growth thing is they're hinging everything on growing the economy.
Mm.
Now, if they're not going to be serious about going back into the single market and the customs union at any point over the
Mm.
next 5 years, they probably, in my opinion, can't be said to have a credible growth strategy, because you would have to go back into the single biggest growth area in the world to have a
Mm.
credible growth strategy. But the idea that you're going to lift children out of poverty by growing the economy doesn't seem quite natural when you haven't got a clear strategy of how you're going to do that well.
Yeah.
So unless we've got this fantasy land where Labour are going to come in and everything's just going to get better all of a sudden, all the businesses are going to flock into the UK,
Mm.
then it seems like it's a bit strange. And for Labour, for this manifesto to be described as Keir Starmer as a mandate for wealth creation when child poverty gets mentioned twice in 25,000 words, it seems like Labour haven't quite got their priorities right. I mean, yes, economic growth is great, but can we not partner that with some more social justice stuff as opposed to it just being about the economy?
So at the same time, I mean, they're trying to appeal to everyone. So I mean, that must be quite difficult, like especially considering how long the Conservatives have been in power. And I mean, I don't think the Conservatives have done well during that time in power.
Mm.
So I mean, I think they really have to sort of reinvent themselves a bit, or at least some people feel the need to.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like this is I
Go on.
feel
Go
like
on.
this is a manifesto for governance. I feel like the Labour Party have in their mind that they know that they're going to potentially win. Um, so far from what certain polls are showing, it could be a big majority, but we don't have all the evidence to show that as yet. I feel like the mentality of the Labour front benches is they know that they're going to be in government after
Mm.
this general election. This from the other manifestos that we have seen, this is a proper manifesto for governance. People have an understanding when reading this manifesto that 14 years of conservative leadership is far too long. They have an understanding that we cannot live in this country with another 5 years of conservative governance. So the Labour Party have put in a manifesto to show the people of this country that they are ready for leadership. They have changed, and the change is now coming. And that is one of the good things I like about this manifesto.
I guess maybe I'd caveat with what I said earlier about how, I don't know. I think what I actually have an issue with, rather than the manifesto itself, is how it's being communicated. I think that the what should be the line from Labour is, when they're asked about a wealth tax, when they're asked about child poverty, is, look, we know we don't have the money right now, but in the future, this is something that we want to do. Same with the two-child benefit cap. Say, look, we don't think that the finances are in a position yet because of what Liz trusted, because of, you know, the war in Ukraine, whatever. The public finances are not in a position to do that yet, but this is something that we want to do. Because the worry is, I guess, for me, is they haven't confirmed any of this. And I just want them to basically say, this is our ideas, you know? I know what they're going to do now when they get into government, but what are their big ideas? What is Keir Starmer going to have said, these are my achievements in 5 to 10 years' time? Because if it's just economic growth, that's frankly not good enough.
I think going off what Piers and Lennon said earlier about the kind of big focus on that economic growth and avoiding, like Angela Rayner avoiding the question about the wealth tax, I think they're kind of going on that very almost like Blairite manifesto message.
The problem with taking a Tony Blair approach is that the economy, unlike 1997, isn't strong, and he can't do much with the economy at the moment. But also, Tony Blair had the levers to pull of devolution, of the Human Rights Act, of freedom of information, where you could say, look, the country is it's changed quite dramatically. Look at the nature of the country; it's changed. Keir Starmer hasn't really got them levers to pull. It seems like Keir Starmer's most important manifesto is going to be the next one, as opposed to this one. This one's about getting into government, and the radical stuff should hopefully come on the next one when the economy's back in shape, when things are getting better.
All right, let's move it on now to the Conservative manifesto. I guess we haven't even really talked about things like national service yet as well, so we can definitely bring those in. So particularly as young people, you know, we've got things like, you know, there are lots of big things in both manifestos that we should probably touch on: vote to 16, private school VAT, scrapping, the investment of new new breakfast clubs, loads of these things that are going to directly impact young people. So it's probably good to chat a little bit about those and move on to the Conservative manifesto.
That the national service policy, I don't think is really a serious policy. National service, it's more of just a ploy to kind of attract the Reform UK wing of the right in the UK electorate, which has completely failed, honestly, because Reform's obviously getting more popular day by day, unfortunately.
I believe that the £2.8 billion, 2.5 billion pounds could be spent elsewhere. If the Conservative government was serious about our young people, they would invest in our young people, not practically forcing them to join the armed services. I understand the volunteering point. I like the sense of volunteering, but if we was fundamentally focusing on the volunteering point, we already have services where young people can volunteer.
I think one of the really positive policies that Labour are putting forward, which is quite rare to be honest, is the removal of VAT from private schools to put into public education. And I don't think you realise how right-wing the media establishment is until you realise how heavily this policy is scrutinised. You know, it's for God's sake, no one touch the private schools. Who's going to think about these private school families when there's a cost of living crisis across the country? It seems like Keir Starmer's got minimal levers to pull, and he wants to think, right, this is directly going to fund breakfast clubs, and so it's a positive policy proposal to put that money into free breakfast clubs. But it seems like Labour are trying to go into 60 mile an hour in first gear. They need to start thinking about free school meals, thinking about tuition fees. To not have a mention of tuition fees in the whole manifesto for the Labour Party seems completely out there.
The Labour manifesto isn't particularly long. The Conservatives is like 80 pages. Labour's closer to 20, I think. But which suggests that they have more things in the works for when they're actually in government, but they're just not telling anyone yet. But what I have seen from like media, from anything in the media, if a Labour spokesperson is being asked about maybe a more radical policy or you know, something about tuition fees, they're not saying we will look into this when finances will allow. They're just saying something else completely, which worries me a bit.
Looking at the Conservative manifesto, because I haven't, in all honesty, I haven't read it. But what I'm looking at and what I am reading is this is basically a manifesto, basically fighting with reform, basically going backwards and forwards with reform. The Tories and reform have this ideology that this election is about immigration. It is the immigration election. But really and truly, this is an election that is about change. It's about people are sick and tired of 14 years of the Tories.
I think another one of the policies that Conservatives are proposing for young people, along with this national service idiocy, is both Sunak and Penny Mordaunt were going on this thing about Mickey Mouse degrees at universities and closing these useless degrees. It's like most of these are drastically important for our country, for culture and for the arts and for basically everything. I mean, I'm studying history and politics. That would be axed. It's just stupid.
So what constitutes a Mickey Mouse degree then? Because history and politics to me sounds like that's something that's quite important.
I don't think it would be
Exactly.
history and politics.
Yeah.
We're moving into a time where the governance of this country thinks we should be more, us as young people should be doing more degrees of STEM. We should be getting more involved in STEM, in the science, in the maths, in the electrical businesses, because we're slowly moving into green. So Mickey Mouse degrees would be the degrees that many of my friends are doing, for example, performing arts or acting or music or something along them rails, which a lot of people think does not earn a lot of money. But what the government needs to understand, a lot of our culture in this country comes from the arts. A lot of the confidence that young people get to go into things like this that we're doing, or public speaking, or into politics, a lot of young people decide to go through the routes of the arts.
Well, I think we've hit the problem with this policy right here already with our confusion is that none of us really know what a Mickey Mouse degree is, and I don't think the government does either, which puts a bit of a damper on Rishi saying he has a clear plan, because I mean it's pretty clear that he doesn't, and the fact that there have been 4 previous Conservative manifestos, which have all failed, pretty much give Leeds any like credibility that the Conservative Party has. That's out the window.
I mean, they have it's very odd how they've approached this election, because they don't want to defend their rhetoric and their record because they know that they can't. They don't they say that they're also trying to put this message of change, which doesn't work when you're in office. Especially when you've been in office for this long, you can't then say, "Oh no, we're the change party," because you've been in office for that long. So there's this strategy of like, "Oh well, we're going to ignore the past and instead say, well, we're doing all these changes," just doesn't really hold up.
This is a manifesto that the Conservatives can confidently put out, knowing they're never going to have to deliver it. So they can essentially appease the reform vote and, tax cuts. Look at these tax cuts, anti-immigration rhetoric, all this. But they're never going to have to do it.
Yeah.
So it's basically the last dying grasp to see who's going to be, which direction. You can probably read a lot into this of which direction the Conservative Party are going to go after the election. If they know they're this far behind and they're still promising this drift to the right again, you can probably tell which way the party's going to go. If they think it's the only chance to save themselves is to out-reform the Reform Party, which they can't do now, Nigel Farage just came back, it's a pretty clear idea of where they're going to go after the election.
Great. Thank you very much to all of you for coming along. Thanks to you for watching the video. Like the video, subscribe. As I say, lots more coming very soon, so make sure you're following it all. Thank you.